Good morning, everyone, to Talk in Davos again, day 3, here live from the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos. This morning, we have with us His Excellency Chief Rabbi David Rosen. Welcome. Good morning.
Thank you.
Chief Rabbi is the International Director of the Interreligious Affairs in the American Jewish Committee. Welcome again.
Welcome to the show.
Great pleasure. Thank you.
So, Rabbi, my first question to you is, what role does religion play in this era of globalization, and what are your views on that?
We have a whole day. So there's an interesting academic, British academic, who has described religion as consisting of 3 B's: beliefs, behavior, and belonging. And all religions are different compositions of these different elements. But perhaps what's most significant of all is this dimension of belonging. Because religion seeks to give meaning to who we are and our relationships, and who we are as both families, communities, nations, and therefore it gives both the sense of identity and it gives a sense of purpose. Today in the world, we are such a fast-moving, mobile world that people very often are lacking stability. That's part of why sociologists talk of the drug culture, various forms of stimuli that people look for, to give them a sense of some kind of, if you like, connectedness that they're lacking in this very mobile, deracinated world. Religious identity gives you a sense of understanding of where you are in the world. So it's enormously important psychologically, but it also seeks to give you ethics, seeks to give you direction, values. Rituals are very often just expressions of frameworks to give a sense of those particular values. And there are belief systems. In some they are greater, in some they are lesser. Buddhism, for example, as a religion, the belief system is almost marginal. In others, let's say Christianity, there is a catechesis where there are doctrinal affirmations. So all these are variant points. For some people need ideology more. They need to have a belief system. For some people, the ethical dimension is, if you like, more primary. And not that I'm saying for the first it's less. But very significantly is this dimension of belonging, is this sense of history, of where we come from, where we're going to, of connectedness. And in our world, probably this sense of connectedness is more important than ever before.
But when you talk about the beliefs and this sense of identity and the belongingness, now, while it really helps to organize people in a certain fashion, it also creates a strong sense of attachment. And does it constrain people's ability to move out of that lens and be more open?
So that's really the million-dollar question. In Jewish tradition, the great sages of the Talmud 2,000 years ago were amazingly self-critical when they said religion. In this sense, they use the word Torah in Arabic, which for Jews refers to the revelation, the text of Revelation. They say it can be Sam HaChayim, it can be the source, the elixir of life, or it can be Sam HaMavet, it can be the potion of death. And this is especially true about religion because it affects the deepest attachments on our part. And this can be used in a positive way and it can be used in a terribly destructive way. But it's not only religion. Sex can be beautiful, or it can be prostitution, or just total degradation. Food can be wonderful, or it can be just gluttony and degeneracy. So the question is not what is the raw material, it's how you use it. Sure. And if religion is used in the way it should be, it can be this greatest ennobling blessing, and both not only raises our sense of the transcendent in the world, but our connectedness not only to those who are close to us, but those who are far to us, above all our common humanity. If religion doesn't emphasize the common humanity, then it's fundamentally betraying itself. Now, why would it betray itself? Because of insecurities, because we don't always feel comfortable in a greater milieu, and therefore we go back to some of these more self-reflective dimensions of religion rather than these more embracing elements. But that's the real challenge. So the real challenge is not to eliminate the foundations of identity, because if we do so, if we deracinate people, and people don't have any connectedness to anything, then they're just floating and easily victims actually of extreme cults and all kinds of radical groups. We need to give them the stability, and therefore we need to nurture them within religious traditions, but nurture them within their religious traditions in a universal manner that affirms their connectedness to humanity, their respect for human dignity, their commitment to justice and peace and the flourishing of society. So when religion is used creatively, it's the greatest blessing. But we see, for example, ISIS and other manifestations of when religion can be used in the most terrible, destructive way.
Sure. And we kind of organize everything, like in terms of nation, in terms of religion, and I would call it an opinion, is that whenever we organize something, we become followers. and we don't lead. And that's my challenge to you. Does religion make people just plain followers? And that's the reason why we have these kind of extreme manifestations.
Well, part of the difficulty with our conversation is trying to talk in cookie-cutter terms. Because religions are not the same thing from, I already said that at the beginning, but let me maybe be more clear. Religions vary both geographically as well as confessionally. One is not the same with the other, and the same religion may be a different phenomenon in one place and another. For example, the relationship to political power. In some places, religion is the power influence of the society. In other places, it's marginal, but not necessarily irrelevant. In other places, it should be, if you like, the prophetic challenge to the power structure. So we have to be a little more specific, in particular, when we're dealing with these questions. But I would say leadership is first and foremost within yourself. Your first and primary responsibility is to lead yourself. Mm-hmm. And I would say every religion seeks to instruct us to know ourselves. To know ourselves means to reflect. What is prayer? What is meditation? It is self-reflection. It's trying to understand who I am, what are my values, what should I be doing, where should I be going, and that's first and foremost your responsibility to lead yourself. And I would say in that sense, religion is leadership. In the sense of its organized structure, which you're referring to, there is a danger that people voluntarily relinquish their own responsibility and put it in the hands of the other, the priest, the rabbi, the imam. That's very, very dangerous. I don't believe that any of our religions teach that that's what we should do. But there is a human need, because to take on your own responsibility for leadership is a challenge. It's much easier to follow. It's much easier to be a sheep and say somebody else will take the decisions for me. And therefore I think the problem is a human problem. I don't think it's a problem of religion. And I think we need to be able to impress upon everybody. I think also what religion says, I mean, especially our Abrahamic religions affirm that the human being is created in a divine image. And, of course, religions of the East have their own way of affirming the importance of human dignity. If you understand your importance as an individual, that there is the element of the divine within you, and you truly appreciate that, then you will realize that you are offending that divinity within you by relinquishing your responsibility to take on leadership on your own shoulders. And therefore everybody should be a leader in that sense. Nobody should be putting their destiny in the hands of another. This doesn't mean we don't appreciate others might have wisdom. And therefore to learn from a teacher is important, and to be able to take guidance, but take it reflectfully. In other words, don't just take it because it's said to you. Consider it, reflect on it, see whether you really think that's the thing to do. And in that sense, then you become part of the leadership process. You're not just relinquishing your own independence and handing it over to another.
In one of your previous comments here at Davos, you said something which is, for me, it pushed me to think, but then I saw things that agree with it and disagree with it in life. And you said exactly, the most dangerous thing for religion is when it's married to political power. What can you say about that?
I think that within our religious traditions, there have been precursors of Lord Acton. Mm-hmm. But Lord Acton's words are the most well known in the world today. And that is that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Mm-hmm. Power is a necessary vehicle within society. We need checks and balances, because any of us, no matter how good we are, once we are in positions of power, it's not just a question of temptation. We don't even realize the way it inevitably corrupts us. We both tend to delude ourselves into thinking we have rights that others don't have. And we therefore tend often to take decisions without fully understanding the human consequences of what we are doing. Now, that corrupting influence is relevant to all institutions. And a structure that should be a moral force to challenge us, to keep us on the right path, to continuously serve as a critique for the way we're behaving, is going to undermine itself if it becomes part of the power structure itself. That's what I'm saying. And if I'm saying religion is healthier when it's in a, I would say, creative tension with political authority. And one thing, I don't think everything in America is good by any stretch of the imagination, but one of the most brilliant things of America is this concept of religion and state, of church and state. And America, most people in America define themselves in religious terms. But nevertheless, the great thing about it is that in order that no one should have the power to dominate within their own particular version of any particular confession or any particular persuasion, America has maintained this idea of separation, and which therefore religion, it lives in creative tension with political authority, and I think that's good for religion. I think in the pre-modern world, all of our religions assumed that power was justification. So you had concepts in Europe like the divine right of kings. If you were a king, it was obviously what God wanted, and therefore basically you could get away with murder, literally. Now that is a terrible thing, and that is a classic example of the abuse of religion.
But in throughout history, there are many times when, because religion was married to the political power, minorities were saved, or people had some kind of liberty. I'm thinking of many countries. I'm from Morocco, and thanks God that the king has the religious power. That's what the majority of people will say.
That's a very good point. And of course, you could also say something else in favor of that. I'll come back to Morocco in a moment. But you could even say, of course, the whole institution in Islam of the dhimma, protecting, therefore, both Jews and Christians under Islamic rule, is an example of where power was used in a constructive way. But nevertheless, in terms of our Western values, or modern values, should I say, or in terms, I would say, enlightened values, where all human beings should be treated fundamentally as equals, that's still not an equal system, and therefore does not allow for the fullness of our fulfillment of potential. In other words, it's still putting somebody's still dominant. You could be a benevolent, dominant authority, or you can be a totalitarian, autocratic, destructive authority.
But that we can say it for the financial system, for example. You have to pay taxes. Is, for me, I see it, for example, the same thing. Where,
yes, but paying taxes is not being...
which is kind of dhimma as well.
Well, it's not quite the same. Let me say,
yes, of course.
Let's make a clear distinction. The issue of paying taxes is a matter of making certain demands of the individual as a member of a particular society.
Clear.
But that's an equal demand.
Yes.
You may grade the degree of taxation according to a person's income, but the principle of taxation is an equal demand.
Yes.
The situation, let me say again, the concept of the dhimma was one of the most enlightened medieval concepts. I'm not sure any other religion had such an example in that regard. And certainly the example of the King of Morocco, certainly from the Jewish community's point of view, was a classic example of being protected by the power institutions. Under the circumstances, it probably was the best. But it's not the ideal.
Of course, nothing is ideal.
The ideal is that all religions are equal, and that all people are equal in that regard, and there's no one benevolent authority that has to be benevolent, but can be autocratic and can sometimes be not benevolent. And even benevolent kings have sometimes done things that have been pretty terrible, and that's the nature, therefore, of authoritarian, totalitarian power.
Like you spoke about, it is left to the individuals to practice leadership, but the world is not like that right now. People interpret religion in different ways. And what do you see as the role of leaders like you in changing that?
So that's also another wonderful question, because it's got so many different components in it. And there are different leadership roles, and there are different leadership styles, and there are, if you like, different leadership, I would say, métier, purposes. There are individuals who serve as a formal head of a community. And there are individuals who have leadership roles in certain aspects of community life. My vocation is essentially representing the Jewish community in relation to other world religions. And it's specifically in the field of interfaith relations. And therefore I have two, if you like, responsibilities, external and internal. My external as ambassador for Judaism to religions of the world is to build the bridges with the other religions of the world, so that we are families in which we respect, one family in which we respect the different components of that human family. In other words, that our identities, our religious identities, are part of the beauty, the diversity of creation, just as the difference of our color, of our eyes, or of our language, or what other cultures. This is part of the beauty of our world, and we need to be able to celebrate that diversity rather than see it as a threat. And therefore, in coming out and encountering people, and I encounter people often from, I'm an Israeli, I encounter people who are very hostile towards Israel, and very often that hostility towards Israel leads them to be hostile towards Jews. It's very important for me to be able to engage them not in a defensive manner, but to engage them in a positive, respectful manner, in which I try to not only show that my regard for them as human beings, but also in terms of representatives of their religious traditions, and to show a certain degree of knowledge of that religious tradition. If I can speak a few words of their language, even better. So I'm a bridge builder in which I seek, therefore, to engage other parts of our world. But in bridge building, I'm seeking to convey a message to my own community in the process, to tell them that's important, to tell them that insularity is not only not good, it's not helpful, it's not constructive, and therefore hopefully to enlighten them internally in the process. So that's my leadership role, which is not the same as other leadership roles.
So, like you were talking about building the bridges. Now, to go from Geneva to Zurich, I take a train, sometimes I take the bus, sometimes I drive. Is there a possibility for leaders like you to tell the followers of a particular faith to try different routes to the same
Destination.
Are you talking now theologically?
Yes.
Or are you talking in terms of human relations?
Ideally, I started with the theological side.
So, obviously, now, I think part of the problem, especially it's been within the Abrahamic or Western religions, has been that we've tended to be too linear in our thought. The assumption that truth or God is a particular point, and there is only one path towards it. And I think part of the wisdom of the East, especially of the religions of the East, of the Dharma religions, is a view that whether you talk of God or Brahman, or whether you talk of the transcendent, whatever language you use, that point is actually, around it is a circle of infinite, unlimited points of departure. And therefore, there is no one exclusive route towards that particular direction. In fact, I had a wonderful guru, Swami friend, who used to love to draw diagrams. And he would say, we may start from two opposing points on the circle to approach that truth.
Sure.
The closer we come together to that point, the closer we are together. Sorry, the closer we approach that center, the closer we are together. In fact, we may be closer than people from the point of departure who do not share that particular aspiration in a sense of purity to achieve that goal. And I think that's, incidentally, I'm going off the subject a little bit, but I think that's very important in the interfaith world. Today I very often feel closer to Muslims or Hindus or Buddhists or Christians very often than I feel to people from my own particular community, because of that sense of like a world outlook of coming together. But I am part of a particular community.
Sure.
That's where I come from, that's my culture, that's my faith system that I come out of, that I'm deeply committed to. And therefore I'm not going to tell somebody in my own community, try out an alternative particular path, because in one life you cannot try out all the unlimited paths anyway. I tell them, be deeply committed to your own path, but be open to the encounter with the other, because no one religion can encapsulate the totality of the divine. The idea that one religion can encapsulate the totality of the divine is ludicrous. It should be self-contradictory, because that suggests that we can't be the totality of God. God is more than any one religion. And if we understand that, then we can understand that in encountering people from other religions, we are encountering other perspectives of the divine. And to be able to see that as a source of enrichment and blessing.
Absolutely. It's, in a way, what you're talking about is like, how do you commit to something and stay detached, which actually is a sense of leadership as well.
Yeah.
You want.
Sorry, let me, if I just
Please go ahead.
let me just say that detached can be understood in a positive sense or in a negative sense. Right. So detached in the sense of not allowing it to blind you or to overwhelm you. I agree with you. But not detached in the sense that you're not passionate about it. I think passion is very important.
Of course.
We still have a few minutes with us, and it's been more than 20 years that you are coming to Davos, and
Old
this
man.
year's not yet. We still need to learn from your wisdom, Chief. the theme of this year is the fourth industrial revolution. So how can you see the role of religion in this dynamic world where everything is changing so rapidly, where when you go to read the news, you maybe already know the answer. So how can religion help the societies to overcome those barriers, if there are, and how can it help the human race to advance?
I think, in fact, this question highlights how religion is perhaps even more important today than ever before in human history. Because getting back to what we were talking about before of the pace of modern life, we very often not only lose our sense of who we are, but we lose our sense of values. We are so busy rushing in this world to achieve certain things, and technology is so fast and things are changing so rapidly, we forget why we are here. What is our purpose of our very existence? We also forget connectedness. I mean, sometimes social media has become anti-social media, that we've forgotten how to connect with one another, to relate with one another, how to be able to express our emotions, how to express our feelings. And these things are the very heart of religious essence in terms of being connected, being aware of where we are, reflecting through, as I say, prayer, meditation, time taken out, days of celebration. In our tradition, particularly the Sabbath as a day of reflection where technology is not invading your space. It's not that technology is bad. On the contrary, technology is a wonderful blessing. But it's not the totality of our existence.
And
if we allow it to be the totality, then technology becomes the master and we become the slave. We need to be able to control it, and to control it needs to be in control of yourself. To be in control of itself needs to be able to reflect upon yourself. It needs to be in touch with the fundamental human values of compassion, of love, of connectedness. So I think it's really important. And also interesting that in Klaus Schwab's book, if I'm not mistaken, the one thing that comes out in terms of this context is what makes us human as opposed to the robot is precisely the concept of faith. To be able to have that vision of what can be greater than ourselves, and to be able to reflect upon ways in which we are not seeking and not progressing towards the transcendent. So I think religion has even greater relevance in this most modern of all ages than ever before.
So maybe a question that our audience may be asking, what a chief rabbi has to do in Davos?
That's also a great question. Well, this is not new. I first came as a result of a session which had nothing to do specifically with religion, but was an example, well, not positively with religion, but related also negatively to it. And that was when the Balkan crisis was just really, probably had just peaked. So, and I was invited on a panel together with other religious leaders on the question of, is religion the problem or the solution? So that was a typical kind of Davos session. But then after September the 11th, 2001, Klaus had this idea of establishing a C100, a council of 100 leaders from the Islamic world and the Western world, to build the bridges between the communities and to overcome the alienation that often had been caused as a result of that, both in business and in civil society, and I was part of that. And there was a religious leaders group. There's, the World Economic Forum has communities. There was at a time a religious leaders community. That fell away, and some of us who apparently the World Economic Forum still wanted to retain the connection with, were absorbed into the Civil Society Council, of which I'm a part. And civil society obviously includes the dimensions of religion.
Sure.
But probably your question suggests that even though you kindly say it's time to learn from my wisdom, that it's time for younger generations to take over.
No, it's a mix between both, and the younger generation are also taking part here in Davos, and they are watching us here live. So stay tuned for our next guest, and thank you, Chief Rabbi, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So much.